I'd like to thank the Pauls for allowing me to have this segment on the podcast, and welcome to a counter-apologetic section of Skepticule. My name is Jonathan M.S. Pearce, and I like to dabble in philosophy and theology, amongst other things. And this is a counter-apologetic segment that's going to look at arguments that theists and believers use and try to pick them to pieces in a short time. So this first segment that I will do will concern perfection and what theists use in something called perfect being theology. So many, or if not all, believers classify God as being perfect, as having intrinsic perfection. And I'd like to look at that term and see what it means, concluding that it is in fact incoherent and fairly meaningless on its own. So let us start by using an example. That ball over there is perfect. Of course, to me, that statement is pretty meaningless on its own. Perfect for what? So therefore, the idea is of perfection that it is goal-oriented, which means that that ball over there is perfect for something. Well, it's small, it's spherical, it has a slightly fuzzy covering, which is luminous. That ball, to me, is a perfect ball for playing tennis. It isn't, however, a perfect ball for playing rugby, or cricket, or football. And that's the same with any kind of use of the word perfect. However, when we use the word perfect, we just forget to add all the goals and the criteria over which we judge that perfection. So, it's a perfect day today, or that's a perfect car, or what a perfect picnic we've just had. All those statements hide an awful lot of unsaid speech, if you like. The goals of all those things are particular to the individual, and that's really important. So the word perfect struggles to make sense intrinsically on its own. So I can only understand perfect as a goal-directed adjective, such as I said, A is perfect for B, or this catapult is perfect for getting this stone over the wall in such and such a manner. Now, one could say that God is perfect at, well, being God, but this implies an infinite regress or circularity. What does it really mean to say that God is perfect? Is he perfect at getting a stone over the wall? Perfect at being loving, merciful, just? Perfect at being perfect? Perfect at designing? Perfect at being moral? Even establishing what a perfect painting is an entirely subjective process, depending upon personal tastes. And this applies to all sorts of things, such as perfection. It becomes either subjective or incoherent. Being perfectly powerful and knowledgeable are admittedly simpler proficiencies to hold conceptually. But there are problems involved when there are multiple aspects to a character. So God has multiple attributes. So by saying just simply God is perfect, you have problems with these multiple attributes working together. God cannot be perfectly just and perfectly merciful, since to be perfectly just assumes punishing justly for a misdemeanor, and to be perfectly merciful assumes some kind of leniency. So, with all sorts of characteristics, and God must have all of these great characteristics, but just because they are all good characteristics doesn't mean that they don't come into conflict with each other. As a result, the theist usually retreats to a maximal perfection, a sort of optimal scenario given all the nuances and variables. But this becomes arbitrary and subjective. So what really is the optimal perfection, or the optimal greatness, or the optimal goodness, or the optimal this, or the optimal that? Well, of course, that's subjective, and it again depends on the goal. Optimal for what? One more ounce of mercy and one less ounce of justice might be perfect for a God wanting to achieve, for example, A, but on the other hand, it might be better to have 1 ounce less of mercy and 1 ounce more of justice to achieve B. Therefore, we need to establish without circularity or incoherence what God is to be perfect for before establishing whether God is or can be perfect. To have a timeless God sitting there and label it as perfect is, to me, meaningless as a standalone descriptor. Therefore, given the subjective nature of appraisals of perfection, I see any argument using the term perfection as an intrinsic, value-laden statement. I see those statements as incoherent. Thanks for listening. You've been listening to Jonathan M.S. Pearce, and check out my blog at www.skepticinc.com/tippling, since my blog name is A Tippling Philosopher. Speak to you next time, and whenever someone tells you that God is perfect, just remember to say, perfect for what?